Using aircraft to lay mines goes back to World War II, as Col. Mike Starbuby writes in The Diplomat. A retired Air Force fighter crewman, Pietertje explains that the technique is difficult to pull off. For one thing, minefields must be laid in patterns to ensure adequate coverage of a target, such as the mouth of a harbor or strait.
Mark 62 quick strike mines, which are 500-pound inert mines, and the goal is to take those and to deliver them to the mine lane that was the target area for us, just off of a small island in the Baltic region.
This was a problem when the U.S. Army Air Force tried to mine from high altitude during WEI. The accuracy was poor. In Vietnam and the Persian Gulf War, mining from low altitude could be effective but was hazardous to air crews. So why are aerial mines suddenly back? These days, rising tensions with China, Iran, and Russia have increased the likelihood of the United States being drawn into a conflict with large, seagoing countries. These countries, particularly China, are economically heavily dependent on the global shipping system. Their navies would also be in a position to challenge the U.S. Navy. Sea mines can cut off countries from shipping routes because they make it too dangerous for shipping companies. Such a minefield could also create no-go zones for enemy warships, forcing them to operate where they are at a disadvantage or bottle them up in port until the minefield was cleared.
The Quick Strike J is a guided version of the Quick Strike mine using the JDAM tail kit and the components from the Quick Strike, which is already in the inventory.
Even a tiny minefield has a tremendous psychological value. As General Norman Schwarzkopf famously said during the Persian Gulf War, it only takes one mine. The new generation of quick strike mines change all of that. Ordinary aerial bombs filled with high explosive and fitted with a magnetic fuse, the 2,000 pounds
European military integration, even if others on the continent aren't yet. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has repeatedly floated the idea of an EU army, only to be met with either ridicule or awkward silence. That remains the case even as the UK, a perennial foe of the idea, is on its way out of the Union. There's little agreement among remaining member states over what exactly such a force would look like and which capabilities national armed forces would give up as a result. And so progress has been slow going. This March, the European Union created a joint military headquarters, but it's only in charge of training missions in Somalia, Mali, and the Central African Republic and has a meager staff of 30. Other multinational concepts have been designed, such as the Nordic Battle Group, a small 2,400 troop rapid reaction force formed by the Baltic states and several Nordic countries and the Netherlands, and Britain's Joint Expeditionary Force, a mini NATO whose members include the Baltic states, Sweden, and Finland. But in the absence of suitable deployment opportunities, such operations-based teams may as well not exist. But under the bland label of the Framework Nations concept, Germany has been at work on something far more ambitious, the creation of what is essentially a Bundes-led network of European mini-armies. The initiative came out of the weakness of the Bundes, said Justyna Gotkowska, a Northern Europe security analyst at Poland's Center for Eastern Studies think tank. The Germans realized that the Bundes needed to fill gaps in its land forces in order to gain political and military influence within NATO. An assist from junior partners may be Germany's best shot at bulking out its military quickly, and German-led mini-armies may be Europe's most realistic option if it's to get serious about joint security. It's an attempt to prevent joint European security from completely failing, Massala said. Gaps in the Bundes is an understatement. In 1989, the West German government spent 2.7% of GDP on defense, but by 2000 spending had dropped to 1.4%, where it remained for years. Indeed, between 2013 and 2016 defense spending was stuck at 1.2%, far from NATO's 2% benchmark. In a 2014 report to the Bundestag, the German parliament, the Bundes inspectors general presented a woeful picture. Most of the Navy's helicopters were not working, and of the Army's 64 helicopters, only 18 were usable. And while the Cold War Bundeswehr had consisted of 370,000 troops, by last summer it was only 176,015 men and women strong. Since then the Bundeswehr has grown to more than 178,000 active duty troops. Last year the government increased funding by 4.2%, and this year defense spending will grow by 8%. But Germany still lags far behind France and the UK as a military power. And boosting defense spending is not uncontroversial in Germany, which is wary of its history as a military power. Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel recently said it was completely unrealistic to think that Germany would reach NATO's defense spending benchmark of 2% of GDP, even though nearly all of Germany's allies, from smaller European countries to the United States, are urging it to play a larger military role in the world. Germany may not yet have the political will to expand its military forces on the scale that many are hoping for, but what it has had since 2013 is the framework nations concept. For Germany, the idea is to share its resources with smaller countries in exchange for the use of their troops. For these smaller countries, the initiative is a way of getting Germany more involved in European security while sidestepping the tricky politics of Germany military expansion. For these smaller countries, the initiative is The Navy first announced the uniform switch from blue to green back in August 2016 after leadership said the change was due to sailors' feedback. The forest green digital camouflage uniform was created by Naval Special Warfare Command as a tactical uniform and has been used by other expeditionary sailors. The full transition of the uniforms will be implemented by 2019. The blue camouflage uniform, which was first introduced in 2009, was mocked and dubbed the nickname Aquaflage for only camouflaging a sailor if they fell overboard. According to a statement from then Navy Secretary Ray Mabus, sailors want uniforms that are more efficient and a lot less blue. As Chief of Naval Operations Admiral John Richardson, and I travel to see sailors deployed around the world, one of the issues they consistently want to talk about are uniforms, said Mabus. They want uniforms that are comfortable, lightweight, breathable ... and they want fewer of them. We have heard the feedback, and we are acting on it. As a direct result of sailors' input, effective October 1st, we will transition from the NWU Type I to the NWU Type 3 as our primary shore working uniform, said Mabus. The new uniform can be found for sale at the Navy Exchange Uniform Centers in Newport, Rhode Island, the Naval Station in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and at Navy bases in Southwest Asia, Europe and Africa. The Navy will begin issuing the uniform to sailors from Navy Region Southwest to Southeast to the Mid-Atlantic and Washington. Combat exercises took place at the French Jungle Warfare School in Libreville, Gabon, a country in Central Africa. After more than a decade and a half of fighting in the Iraqi desert and mountains of Afghanistan, the Army is stepping up its training in jungle warfare conditions as part of a broader effort to anticipate emerging terrorist and state threats against whom the Army could be called to operate. The training included mock combat circumstances wherein troops had to repel ambushes, attack enemy locations and conduct surveillance and reconnaissance missions in circumstances with reduced visibility. In the jungle everything is in confined quarters. You do not have freedom of maneuver because of the vegetation, First Lieutenant Blake Moore, Assistant Operations Officer, 2nd Brigade, 82nd Airborne, told Scout Warrior in an interview. Soldiers participating in the Jungle Warfare School ran through an obstacle courses, confronted various booby traps and practiced specific tactics needed to fight in a jungle environment. These include stalking enemies in camouflage, sniper operations and using trees and brush to launch surprise attacks. While some infrared sensors might still be able to detect heat signatures through jungle leaves, trees and underbrush, electro-optical sensors and other kinds of visually oriented technologies will operate quite differently in the jungle. Moore explained that, Despite the vastly different surveillance conditions in the jungle, most soldier equipment is the same as what is used in desert and mountain conditions. He did, however, say that oftentimes different boots designed to drain water and dry quickly in wet jungle conditions. Army soldiers are now conducting operations in Djibouti, Africa and participating.
What it does is fire support with the grunts down range. We provide support for them, whether it's HE rounds that go and they kill the enemy, or it's smoke rounds to suppress the enemy's view of their position, and then a loom at night so that they can see the enemy. It's timing. I mean, you see them and you know their enemy, you get the okay to shoot. You need to engage them and destroy them as fast as you can because they're going to be shooting back at you.
Direct fire requires the section to act and operate as an independent unit to suppress the enemy. So we do not need FDC, and it's just on us to look through our optics, get the correct range. The chief will call out the adject, alert the section of what our target is, the range, our shell, fuse.
Hey, got your block, got your SIG, got your 1911. Battery storage too. Double A's, triple A's, CRs. We've got sling release, horizontal and vertical. Got a nice little
SWAT officers, Marines, Army lieutenants, saying that this is an essential tool for missions, allowing them to look over walls. We're seeing a lot of
Defense Minister announced on Sunday. We are increasing our British points of presence across the world. We will not be closing our facilities in Germany, and instead use them to forward base the army, Gavin Williamson said in a statement released by the UK government. Under the UK's 2010 Strategic Defence and Security Review, permanent deployment of UK personnel to military bases in Germany was to end by 2019, although some training was still to be undertaken. According to Sunday's statement, British Army personnel will be permanently based at the 45 square mile, 117 square kilometre, Seneliger training area, which provides both UK and NATO forces with a live firing training area. Support will also be given to NATO infrastructure and assets, including the combined river crossing capability based nearby in Minden, in the northeast of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, just west of Hanover. It uses M3 vehicles, self-propelled amphibious rigs, jointly operated by British and German troops. London and Berlin are in discussions regarding a future bilateral upgrade of the vehicles. The British Army is maintaining a presence at the Ayrshire Barracks in Mönchengladbach, where approximately 2,000 vehicles can be stored, and the German Wolfen Defence Munitions Storage Facility, which holds operational ammunition. The British Army of the Rhine was formed after the Second World War and developed with NATO after 1949. In 1967 it was reduced in strength to 53,000 soldiers before it was replaced by the 25,000-strong British Forces Germany in 1994. Until 2015 there were 5,200 British troops in Germany. The United States Army has about 36 military bases in Germany plus Navy and Marine Corps personnel at sea. About 33,000 U.S. personnel are based there. In September, the U.S. Army's European headquarters in Wiesbaden, Germany said a further 1,500 soldiers would be in the country by September 2020. The additional troops were a display of our continued commitment to NATO and our collective resolve to support European security.
Take their place, spreading chaos and turmoil. Today's warfighter must continue to adapt to unfamiliar environments and technological advancements used by our adversaries in ungoverned areas. It is exactly in these ungoverned areas of the world where Army Special Operations Forces operate and excel, known around the globe as Green Berets. Each Special Forces soldier possesses unique skills and qualifications to maintain a continuous presence overseas, making them the force of choice for any contingency.
A great attribute.
Green Berets are individually selected and specially trained through the Army's most rigorous selection program. The first step required to embark on this journey is to volunteer and then never quit.
Quitting ultimately means mission failure, and in Special Forces, mission failure is not an option.
A true quiet professional knows that wearing the Green Beret says more about you than you could ever say about yourself. Enlisted volunteers must complete basic combat training followed by advanced individual training and airborne school before they can attend the Special Forces Assessment and Selection, or SFAS. SFAS is also where soldier volunteers from within the Army ranks begin their path to becoming a Green Beret. Completion of SFAS leads to entry into Special Forces Qualification Course, or Q Course. The Q Course consists of 6 phases: orientation, small unit tactics, military occupational specialty, or MOS training, non-conventional warfare, language, and military freefall. For MOS training, officers focus on leadership planning, and NCOs or enlisted volunteers receive specialty training on weapons, engineering, medical, or communications, dependent on soldier aptitude. This training is intense and designed to test the whole person, not just strength or tactical skills, but also intellectual and social skills. Tactical unconventional skills required to coerce, disrupt, or work with a guerrilla force in the overthrow of a hostile government or occupying power are cornerstones of the training. Upon completion of the Q course, a soldier will have earned the right to wear the Green Beret. New Green Berets are assigned to an Operational Detachment Alpha, or ODA, which is comprised of 12 soldiers, each with a specific skill and duty.
Special Forces is unique in that we are able to accomplish many tasks with few men.
With a rewarding career path like no other, Special Forces soldiers are also given ample opportunities for advancement and additional training, which includes Halo, Scuba, and other advanced training.
I would consider being SF the professional leagues of the military.
On an ODA, your newly acquired skills are put to the test as you bond with your new team. You will be expected to adapt to any situation, from operating in a denied area as part of a small team to advising diplomats and interagency partners within an embassy. You will work hard, train hard, and depend on each other to accomplish the mission, regardless of where it may take you. Throughout this journey, your SF teammates will become your second family, creating a timeless, unbreakable bond.
The kind of guys we're looking for is the selfless guys that are humble, that can put themselves, through hell and back and come back for it and do it for their teammates that are on my left and my right. Our families know each other. We go to our kids' birthday parties. We are one big family.
The need is great for those who can rise to the challenge. We are looking for volunteers who possess courage, integrity, perseverance, and the desire to answer the calling of the soldier elite, de oppresso liber, to free the oppressed. United States Army Special Forces, embrace the challenge.
It had submitted the new Enfield individual weapon for NATO trials. The E was chambered in the new 4.85mm cartridge, which quickly became obsolete as it became clear 5.56 was the new standard. Engineers found that it was not difficult to rechamber the weapon in 5.56. The resulting weapon was known as the L85A1 and entered service with the British Army in 1985. Like many assault rifles, it operated on the gas piston, rotating bolt design and internally was in many ways based on the US-designed Armalite AR-18 rifle. The rifle featured an adjustable gas system with positions for normal use, adverse conditions, and launching rifle grenades. Rifles issued to infantry were equipped with the sight unit, small arms, Trilux, 4x optical sight with backup iron sights. Rifles issued to support units and vehicle crews had a built-in carry handle with iron sights. Vehicle crews. The L85A1's bullpup configuration made for a compact weapon. Even with a 20-inch barrel, the rifle was only 30.9 inches long. By contrast, the U.S. Army and Marine Corps M16A2 with 20-inch barrel was 39 inches long. This made the rifle easier to handle in tight spaces, such as urban terrain or inside a warrior infantry fighting vehicle. Downsides common to early bullpups included a fixed length of pull and the need for left-handed shooters to learn to shoot with their right hand or have the unpleasant experience of ejecting brass pummeling them in the face. The L85A1, often referred to as the SA-80, was seemingly off to a bright start, but users quickly discovered problems. Early rifles produced at the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield were of poor quality, with production improved only after a new factory at West Nottingham went into operation. Numerous design flaws continued to go unaddressed. More than 24 issues were catalogued by 1990, including corroded bolts, extractor issues, broken firing pins, and faulty magazine release mechanisms. The weapon showed extremely poor reliability in Operation Granby, the UK's participation in the 1991 Persian Gulf War. The rifle was praised for its accuracy when it worked properly, but that was nowhere near often enough. A number of fixes were implemented to address the most severe problems, but the L85A1 continued to have problems throughout the 1990s. In 1998, German small arms manufacturer Heckler & Koch received a contract to modify L85A1S to the L85A2 standard, incorporating further changes designed to boost reliability. In 2016, the British Army began converting rifles to the A3 standard. The A3 standard is mainly a functional improvement rather than reliability upgrade, meant to keep the rifle useful until 2025. The A3 involves upgrades to the upper receiver, a new handguard with a full-length Picatinny rail, and compatibility with the Heckler & Koch AG-36 underbarrel grenade launcher. The Suzette sight is replaced with a Trijicon ACOG 4X sight or Elk Inspector lightweight day sight. Although London eventually ordered 300,000 L85s, outside the British Army the weapon was a failure. A small number were donated to Commonwealth countries as foreign aid, but no other country actually bought the rifle. British Special Forces, including the SAS and SBS, preferred the M16 rifle and later a version of the M4 carbine, the C8, produced by Colt Canada. Not even the Falkland Islands Defence Force equipped itself the L85.
So we still got a couple minutes of digging up the sidewall. They're plastic
with a brass shell and designed to be fired from conventional weapons.
In the air-to-air capability is shown here. Here we have, for reference, 2 NATO rounds fired at this steel plate, about 1/4 inch. You can see the impact here. That was at a velocity of 300 meters per second. Now, for comparison, here's the impact on our round at the same velocity. So it's equal for equal.
While Exxon said the technology is completely scalable, the company is offering the bullets in NATO 12.7, 7.62 and 5.56 mm, as well as smaller calibers. The 12.7 mm bullet, a machine gun round, has an effective range of 2,200 meters through the air and 60 meters underwater, according to the company. The 7.62 and 5.56 rifle rounds are effective underwater at 22 and 14 meters, respectively.
The underwater bullet, fact or myth? Up until recently, this was a pretty solid myth, but developments in weapons science have turned it into a technology that will change the face of maritime warfare forever.
The company released the product earlier this year, and has already sold small quantities of CAFX bullets for research and development testing to international militaries that Oxn's declined to name. 27th Sapper Company, 27th Engineer Battalion, 20th Engineer Brigade, out of Fort Hood, Texas, jumped with the new helmets from a C-17 Globemaster III at 1,250 feet over the Sicily drop zone at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The jump test was coordinated by the U.S. Army Operational Test Command's Airborne and Special Operations Test Directorate. Operational testing is about soldiers. It is about making sure that the systems developed are effective in a soldier's hands and suitable for the environments in which soldiers train and fight, Colonel Brad Mock, head of the Test Directorate, said in an Army release. According to Leon L. Price, a test officer with the Test Directorate, the purpose of the operational test using airborne paratroopers was to collect data to evaluate the suitability and safety of the IHPS when worn during static line airborne operations. The new helmet is slightly lighter than the current Army combat helmet and includes accessories such as a mandible, visor, night vision goggle attachment device and a system to measure head trauma. Test Manager Steve McNair, of Program Manager Soldier Protection and Individual Equipment out of Fort Belvoir, Virginia, said the Army is expected to field 7,000 integrated head protection systems to separate brigades during fiscal 2018 before